Well, Bertine, you must get an interesting reaction when you tell people you're from Wyoming.
Yes, I do. But I say it with pride because, I'm blessed to be part of Wyoming. It's one of the best places to live, given the size of our communities where people can actually interact and, raise a family. I have now a wife and 2 children, and I wouldn't have chosen another place.
It's funny, it seems at first glance like a somewhat unlikely spot. It's a small population to begin with, obviously. A few minority communities and the accompanying support services that you would expect. And I'm wondering, okay, if those are the deficits, what are the pluses that you have seen in your time here?
I think that there's a benefit of having a diversity of any kind within communities. It's certainly in legal,
to the community itself.
To the community itself. We live in a globalized world. I don't think anyone in 2012 can be blind to the fact that our actions here in the state of Wyoming have repercussions all around the world. And that's something I like to emphasize in my work with law students at the University of Wyoming. Yes, they might be helping a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo, but those issues and maybe the natural resource extraction industry that is somehow operating in the DRC might also operate here in our backyard, and these issues are often linked, and we can't
Republic of Congo.
we can't ignore the interlinkages in this world.
Well, you must encounter the curiosity factor, I would imagine. You're probably understating it here, right? How do you deal with that? And I suspect you might even turn it to your advantage.
As a teacher and as an educator, I believe that it's my job and my role to educate people around me, and by any means possible, even using myself as an example. You walk in my classroom, and I would have students who have never been in front of an African American before, or being taught,
an African,
or an African, in that matter, and it's a culture shock, and I need to acknowledge that culture shock going to be there, and make the environment, accepting and allowing us to meet to that point, so that we can move forward, and it's a beautiful mix, where you can allow students to feel comfortable to ask you any type of question.
So what's the range of response you've gotten? I mean, I'm sure you've got many students and teachers and other teachers and parents at the high school in Gillette. What's been the range of response you've gotten?
The questions is there's this curiosity. People are intrigued by who you are, plus having an accent even increase the intrigue.
It's Du Bois, by the way.
Yeah, not Du Bois. So there's this intrigue, in questions, and people are trying to find out who you are, and that's the beauty about Wyoming. We're such a small, community where people are interested in knowing who you are as a person, but understand also the dynamic that, revolve around you. My students want to know, where is my accent from? Parents, of my students want to know a little bit about my story. My wife always, is asked around town, okay, your daughter, did you adopt her, and that kind of stuff? But it's not in a mean way, and that's one thing that I want to, stress. People are curious, and they are eager to learn about other people, and that's something a refugee can bring here, because you're bringing this richness, culture. You are bringing these different elements that otherwise people in Wyoming might not be exposed to.
Well, something to talk about on those long winter nights, right?
Definitely. You just invite me to your house, and
Well, there's got to be something that you really miss about, whether it's a food or something like that, from your childhood back in Africa, that obviously you just can't get here, because there's always regional specialties now. What do you miss the most? I wish I could really just have that.
Should I go step by
step? A and D?
Well, the food is one, one of the
How's
the
Wyoming
biggest,
food?
It's great. I know my wife is in the other room, but I think to a certain extent, I want to make sure that our viewer understand that, that's the beauty that we have in Wyoming. The fact that we are a community that is, so knitted together that people are willing to get to know you and visit with you and trying to understand, okay, this is the way we do things here. How different is that from home? And sharing that and, having that captive audience that want to hear about it, make that transition smoother. Now, to answer your question, food it's big. I don't remember the last time I ate something called ugali, which is we create this mushy. I don't even know.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah, it's mashed potatoes.
It's not potatoes.
Yeah, it's not based upon potatoes, but based.
Sounds like a starchy comfort food.
Yes, yes. And I'm not even sure, to be honest, if how my wife will react if I was to take her and expose her to that kind of food. So, there is this beauty into seeing that bridge gap between these, communities and bringing that richness.
And sharing other parts of culture too. I mean, obviously, literature, you're in a school, so you have an opportunity to talk to students. Music, I would think, would be a thing. Do you get a chance to kind of exchange views on music?
Oh yeah, definitely. We in our school we have something called advocacy period, which is a time where, we put academics aside and trying to create relationship with students. And I believe, music is a way to understand somebody's beliefs and roots. So I bring my music and try to interpret, some dance moves and, they might seem awkward, to a 16, 17-year-old, but it gives them a perspective of where I'm coming from and what was things that made me jump around and why I identify with that type of music.
I'm really sorry we missed that lesson. Bertine's story must strike you as a remarkable one, obviously, but just the success that he's had here in adjusting to life in a completely different society. This must be a story that you must be eager to get out there and tell and show too.
Yeah, Bertine's an extremely resourceful, wonderful advocate for himself, and his story has been a great one to use as a model of a refugee who's come and made the most of their life in the country. So it's been an honor to work with him and to expose law students to his story.
Well, before you end this, because you have been actually working with the United Nations on the issue of child soldiers and I'm just wondering if you could, and refugees as well, and I'm just wondering, give us a little sense, if you would, of the kind of advisory work that you're involved in, and do you think anybody's listening to the advice?
Well, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees invited me as a representative from Wyoming, a refugee, residing in Wyoming, to kind of brainstorm with refugees from various parts of the United States about the best way that NGO can best serve refugees.
Non-governmental organizations,
yes, can best serve refugees, around the United States, and how can we help shape policies that can affect refugees, not only here at home, but around the globe. And I've been blessed to be part of that organization, and I serve on it on a voluntary basis, and I just provide ideas and what I think can be changed. For example, bringing the opportunity of receiving refugees in Wyoming. That's one element that I've been discussing with the UNHCR. As well as our local government.
How could we be proactive, in other words, to actually attract more, refugees here? I mean, you came because of a scholarship, I believe it was, at the university. So that's obviously not any kind of state office, working on refugee issues.
Well, I believe we have to come to the realization that we have a lot to offer to refugees that we actually realize. Wyoming has the lowest level of unemployment rate in the United States. Speaking about my town of Gillette, for example, we have a lot of transient movement, of people coming and out, and refugees can actually fill those gaps because they understand that this is a new home where they didn't have a home. So that is an advantage right there. If you look in terms of transition, as a refugee, it will be easier for me to integrate in a small community like Wyoming, Gillette, or Casper, or Cheyenne, or Riverton, than being thrown in New York City. It's just too big and too fast for a refugee to easily find their way around. Some people will tell you that we don't have the logistics to provide that, but I believe that people in Wyoming have the heart and the care to actually make that transition smoother for refugees.
I'm going to wrap this up by asking each of you one last thing, and that is, what's the single thing, the single biggest myth perhaps you might want to say, or misunderstanding, the biggest thing that you would like people to know or to understand about refugees and where they can fit in? I'll start with you.
Okay. I would say that refugees are a benefit to the communities and societies into which they become a part of and integrate, and that rather than seeing refugees as a community that will take away social resources.
A burden, something perhaps to fear, something
exactly.
like that?
The benefits that come from having a diversity within a community far outweigh any negative impacts that welcoming refugees in the community might have.
What would you like people to understand? I think you've been working on that for a little while now, actually.
Yeah, my comment is completely in line with what Bridget just said. It's important for people to understand that refugees are not, for the most part, come and be fully dependent on the government, social assistance. Refugees, and I always use myself as an example, are thrilled to be given a chance at life, to be given this second life opportunity, and they take it seriously. And I took it seriously, and I understood that this is the land of opportunity. The American dream actually still exists, and you give me this opportunity, I'm going to make something out of it. And that's what refugees will do, and become full participant and contribute member of their communities, and that's what the blessing that refugees can bring in our communities.
I have to ask you one more thing. What was the biggest surprise that you encountered here in the United States? What surprised you the most?
Oh, now I have to think hard. There are so many surprises, but one of the biggest one to me was soccer versus football.
Oh, that football.
Yeah. The football that you use your feet.
Well, it's very nice of you to call it football.
I recall, I believe it was a week after I arrived, and some boys in the neighborhood invited me to go play some football. And I walked back in the house and put some cleats and, all the gear for playing soccer.
You were looking for
and
a round ball.
Yeah, and they were looking around and they're like, "What are you doing?" And it was a big culture shock to understand football, and I came actually to love football and the American football and enjoy it very much so. But it was a big culture shock. I was like, okay.
So are you a Broncos fan now then?
Yes.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
for
right.
your time.